Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at something pretty intense. A campaign that lasted, over 8 months?
That's right, 8 grueling months.
And all focused on just one single city, a port. It became this symbol of, just stubborn resistance, didn't it?
Absolutely. This wasn't just another battle on the Eastern Front. It was a massive siege. Brutal attrition, incredible firepower.
And it basically decided the entire southern flank in 1942.
It really did. We're talking about Sevastopol, of course. The fight between the Axis, mostly German 11th Army, some Romanian units too, and the Soviets for this absolutely critical port in Crimea.
October 41 to July 42.
Yep, that's the time frame. And the sheer scale of effort needed to crack it. Well, that's what makes it so compelling to analyze.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to cut through some of that fog of war. We want you to understand why this port mattered so much.
And the kind of tactics used. I mean, the logistics, the specialized siege equipment.
Oh, yeah. We'll definitely get into the super heavy guns. That's quite a story.
It is. And then there's the defense itself. 8 months. Major General Petrov's independent coastal army, sailors fighting as infantry. It's brutal.
It really highlights how sometimes the friction of war, just the effort of moving stuff and keeping people supplied, can be as decisive as the final battle.
Exactly. The logistics are a huge part of this story.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Sevastopol. Why was it so hard to take? You mentioned the geography.
Right. You really have to understand the location first. By pretty much all accounts, it was considered one of the strongest fortresses in the world.
That's really strong.
Very much so. It's perched on this high, rugged, bare limestone promontory, southwestern tip of Crimea. It's like nature designed it for defense.
So attacking by land was just inherently difficult.
Extremely. And the cliffs around the harbor, they made any kind of large-scale amphibious assault basically suicidal, just too exposed, too dangerous.
But the Soviets didn't just rely on the cliffs, did they? They'd built it up.
Oh, absolutely. This was a modern engineered fortress, too. Yeah. The Soviet Navy played a huge role here. They integrated these massive coastal batteries right into the land defenses.
So talking big guns.
Big guns, repurposed battleship guns, 180 millimeter, even 305 millimeter pieces.
Wow. And they could fire inland.
Yes, that's the key. They were housed in heavily reinforced concrete fortifications. Some had armored turrets nearly 10 inches thick, so they could hit German troop concentrations far from the coast.
Okay, so it's this combination of natural defenses and heavy engineering.
Exactly, which is why Hitler apparently called it an unsinkable aircraft carrier.
Right, that phrase comes up a lot. But why did Hitler suddenly become so focused on it? Wasn't Crimea initially a bit of a sideshow in Barbarossa?
It was, relatively speaking. The initial German plans didn't prioritize it heavily. But the problem was Sevastopol gave the Soviets a base.
For the Black Sea Fleet, obviously.
Yes, and for the Red Air Force. And they started using those Crimean airfields very effectively.
To hit strategic targets.
You got it. Specifically, the Romanian oil refineries at Ploiati. That was the primary source of fuel for the entire German war effort on the Eastern Front.
Ah, okay. So the Soviets were striking at Germany's fuel tank.
And successfully. In mid-1941, Soviet air raids launched from Crimea managed to destroy something like 12,000 tons of vital oil.
12,000 tons. That would get Berlin's attention.
It absolutely did. Triggered a major strategic rethink. Hitler issued Directive 33 in July 41, basically demanding the immediate conquest of Ukraine and Crimea.
So the unsinkable aircraft carrier was suddenly target number one because it was hitting them where it hurt most their fuel supply.
Precisely. The whole Black Sea region suddenly became vital.
And the job fell to Erich von Manstein, General Oberst Manstein and his 11th Army.
That's right. And interestingly, as you mentioned before we started, his 11th Army. It wasn't exactly the powerhouse of the austere at that point.
No, it was apparently the weakest army on the entire front initially. Just 7 infantry divisions.
Yeah, something like that. But Manstein was good. He managed to clear most of Crimea by November 1941, defeated 2 Soviet armies doing it. But Sevastopol itself held out.
And the defense inside? Who was holding the line?
Primarily Major General Ivan Yefimovich Petrov. His independent coastal army, about 32,000 men. They'd actually been evacuated by sea from Odessa after that siege.
So they were veterans of siege warfare already.
They were. But the real surprise backbone of the defense came from the Navy.
The Black Sea Fleet sailors.
Exactly. Vice Admiral Oktyabrsky, the fleet commander. He basically repurposed nearly 50,000 naval personnel technicians, gunners, sailors, to fight as ground infantry.
50,000, that's a huge number. How effective were sailors as foot soldiers?
Well, it's a mixed bag, On the one hand, incredible discipline. They were used to following orders, maintaining complex equipment.
Be good with machine guns, artillery.
Very good. Excellent gunners. And incredibly stubborn defenders. They formed these large naval brigades and just absorbed horrendous losses without breaking.
But the downside?
They lacked basic infantry skills. Fieldcraft, maneuvering, camouflage, stuff sailors just don't train for. So great for holding a fixed line, terrible in open combat or counterattacks. They were anchors, not assault troops.
Okay. So Manstein plans his first big push to take the city, end of November 41.
That was the plan. But the weather, it just completely intervened.
Yeah.
Mid-October saw these torrential rains turn the whole area into a mud pit.
Rasputitsa.
Classic Rasputitsa. Delayed the German buildup for weeks. They couldn't move their artillery, their supplies. It gifted the Soviets crucial time.
Time to dig in even deeper.
Exactly. Manstein finally launched the attack on December 17, 1941.
And the Soviets used their ships.
Aggressively. The battleship Parizhskaya Kamina cruisers, they sat in the harbor and just pounded German positions. Provided really critical fire support.
Which means the Luftwaffe's first job was?
Take out those ships. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stuka dive bombers, Heinkel medium bombers, they went straight for the harbor.
And they had some success.
They did. Sank the cruiser Chervona Ukraina in November. But the real tragedy early on was the sinking of the liner Armenia.
That wasn't a warship, was it?
No, it was evacuating people. Soldiers, yes, but also thousands of civilians, around 5,000 people on board. The Luftwaffe hit it on November 7th.
How many survived?
8. Just 8 people out of 5,000. It shows you the brutality of the air war over the Black Sea. Anything moving was a target.
Jesus. Okay, so despite the air attacks, the December offensive, it fails.
It does. Partly due to that stubborn defense, the naval gunfire, but also because the Soviets pulled off a really smart, timely diversion.
You're talking about the Kerch landings.
Exactly. The amphibious assault on the Kerch Peninsula, way over on the eastern tip of Crimea, launched right after Christmas, December 26th to 30th.
Tactically brilliant, even if it didn't work out long term.
At that moment, yes, because it forced Manstein to panic. He had Soviets landing in his rear. He had to pull forces away from Sevastopol immediately.
Forces he needed for the final push.
Critically needed forces. He had to send them east to contain the Kerch bridgehead. That completely relieved the pressure on Sevastopol.
And led to a stalemate.
Yep. A temporary stalemate that lasted right through the winter and into the spring of 1942. The siege was effectively lifted for months, gave the defenders even more time, 6 crucial months.
So that first kick attempt failed. Manstein realizes he can't just rush Sevastopol.
Right. He basically concludes it can only be taken by overwhelming, just unprecedented force. Forget maneuver. This is going to be a siege. Pure industrial-scale siege warfare.
And this gets a code name.
Störfang.
Yeah.
Sturgeon catch. Launched June 2nd, 1942.
Now, his infantry divisions, they'd been through a tough winter, right?
Severely depleted. Yeah, some were down to like 35% strength.
Yeah.
Maybe 75% if they were lucky. They did have support from some very good Romanian mountain divisions, though. Elite troops.
But the core German infantry was worn down.
Very much so. Which leads to a key strategic decision. If your infantry is weak and you don't want politically costly German casualties against heavy fortifications,
You lean on firepower.
massively. Shift the entire weight onto artillery and air power. And that's exactly what Manstein did.
And this is where the logistics just go off the charts. We're talking about bringing in specialized, super heavy siege guns.
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of crazy. Forget your standard divisional artillery.
Yeah.
We're talking weapons that needed their own dedicated railway lines just to get them there.
Like the Karl Gerate mortars.
Right. 3 of those 600-millimeter self-propelled mortars, huge machines, named Thor and Odin, among others, designed specifically to smash heavy concrete bunkers.
600 millimeter. That's enormous, but not the biggest one they brought.
No, the absolute monster was the 800-millimeter railway gun, Schwere Gustav.
800 millimeters, that's what,
Crazy.
nearly 3 feet across?
Just about. The shells weighed 7 tons each. 7 tons. Theoretically, one hit could penetrate any known fortification at the time.
The logistics of just getting that thing there must have been insane.
Staggering. It tells you how important Hitler thought Sevastopol was. It needed its own special railway track. Took something like 2,500 men 3 weeks just to assemble it on site.
2,500 men just to assemble it.
Yeah. And the crew to operate it was over 250, plus thousands more for security, maintenance, everything. It wasn't just a gun. It was like a small, mobile town built around this giant cannon.
Okay, so this colossal effort, this logistical black hole.
Yeah.
What was the actual payoff? How effective was Gustav?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
Tactically,
Yeah.
questionable. Very questionable. The Karl mortars, the 600-millimeter ones, they only had a range of maybe 4 to 6 kilometers.
Which puts them in range of Soviet counter-battery fire.
Exactly. They needed constant infantry protection.
Yeah.
And schwer Gustav. Well, they only had 48 rounds for it, for the entire operation.
Only 48 shots after all that effort.
Yep. And the rate of fire was incredibly slow.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 shots a day if they were lucky. The operational effort just dwarfed any real tactical impact.
So it was more psychological propaganda.
Arguably, yes. A demonstration of German power, their determination to crush the fortress, no matter the cost, but as a purely military tool. Very debatable effectiveness.
So while Gustav gets the headlines, the real workhorse was volume fire from everything else.
Absolutely. The German artillery park was this bizarre mix. Modern guns, yes, but also obsolete stuff, like pre-World War I 283-millimeter mortars, and captured foreign guns like giant Skoda 305-millimeter howitzers from Czechoslovakia.
They just used anything they could find that threw a big shell.
Pretty much. The total ammo consumption for Störfang,
Yeah.
hard to wrap your head around. 46,750 tons of artillery shells alone, just for the final assault phase.
46,000 tons.
Yeah. The goal wasn't precision anymore. It was just overwhelming, crushing destruction by sheer volume.
And backing up the guns. The Luftwaffe.
Right. Compensating for any gaps in the artillery. Manstein called in Wolfram Freiherr von Richthofen, yes, related to the Red Baron and his 8th Air Corps.
A specialized unit.
Very much so. Specialized in anti-fortification work, close air support. They assembled around 600 aircraft. A huge concentration of bombers, dive bombers, Junkers Dewey 87 Stukas, Heinkel 111s, Junkers 88s.
And Richthofen was known for intensity.
Absolutely legendary for it.
Yeah.
Contemporary accounts say the bombing was far beyond previous German bombing offensives against cities such as Warsaw, Rotterdam, or London.
Worse than the Blitz?
In terms of focus intensity on a small area, yes. This wasn't just area bombing. It was targeted demolition work from the air.
Do we have numbers on that?
We do. In June 1942 alone, just 1 month, the Luftwaffe flew 23,751 sorties
23,000 flights.
and dropped 20,528 tons of bombs. On this one besieged city and its defenses, it created an apocalyptic environment.
What was left of the city afterward?
Almost nothing. At the end of the siege, reports say only 11 buildings in the entire city were undamaged.
Yeah.
11. Everything else, supply depots, command centers, hospitals, homes erased.
Just unbelievable devastation. And facing this onslaught, Petrov's defenders, they had fortifications.
They did. 3 main defensive lines. An outer one, 15-20 kilometers out. An inner belt about 5 kilometers from the city, all using that naturally rugged terrain.
And they named their strongpoints.
Yeah, for morale.
Yeah.
Fort Stalin, Fort Molotov. The really big one was Fort Maxim Gorky the Sug. These were serious positions. Deep concrete bunkers, those heavy armored turrets we mentioned.
Did they have enough guns themselves?
Petrov's army had about 455 artillery pieces, nearly 1,000 mortars. But, and this is crucial, after 8 months of siege, they were desperately short of key supplies.
It's like what?
Anti-aircraft guns. They had almost no defense against Richthofen's bombers. Tanks were few, food was running out, and critically, mortar ammunition. Many of their own close support weapons were silent before the final German push even began. They were strong, but starving and exposed from the air.
So Manstein's plan, soften them up completely from the air first. June 2nd to 6th, 1942.
Right, an all-out air offensive before the infantry even moved. Maximum destruction first.
And the Luftwaffe targets. Everything.
Key infrastructure mainly. Power stations, water pumps, harbor facilities, anything needed to sustain the defense. But they also specifically targeted the concrete bunkers with heavy caliber bombs.
The big ones. SC-1000s.
Yep, 1,000 kilogram, 1,400 kilogram, even the massive 2,500 kilogram Satan bombs. These were designed to penetrate deep, reinforced concrete. This wasn't just surface bombing, it was demolition.
There's a quote from a Soviet commander, Evan Laskin.
Yeah, describing the sky. He said it was clouded by smoke from explosions of thousands of bombs and shells. Like this enormous dark cloud that just rose up and clips the sun.
Hard to imagine fighting under that. The psychological impact alone?
Must have been terrifying. Constant noise, constant explosions, day and night.
Then June 7th, the ground attack starts. Main effort in the northeast.
Yes, Yelevi Corps. That was Manstein's designated striking force. But surprisingly, even after that immense bombardment, progress was slow at first.
Why? Weren't the defenses shattered?
Shattered, yes, but the rubble itself became a defense. And the infantry were cautious. They were hesitant to advance too close behind their own artillery fire. Friendly fire was a real risk. Even Richthofen, the air commander, was apparently unimpressed, called the first day a real disappointment.
So the forts held initially, forced the Germans into close quarters fighting.
Exactly. Brutal, grinding fights for every strong point.
And speaking of those superguns, remember Schwerer Gustav and the Karl mortars?
Did they actually achieve much against the forts?
Well, there's one documented success, the Karl Gerate mortar Thor, the 600mm one. On June 6th, a single shell hit and damaged the second turret of Fort Maxim Gorky III.
One hit.
One significant hit, which sort of underlines their limited impact, considering the effort involved. It was actually the Luftwaffe, later, that finished off Maxim Gorky I's communication systems, effectively blinding it, not the giant mortars.
So it quickly turns into a battle of attrition, grinding down the defenders. Relentless attrition. And this period, mid-June, really highlights the logistics struggle again, especially for the Soviets. The Black Sea Fleet was still trying to run supplies in.
Through the blockade, that must have been incredibly dangerous.
Extremely, but desperate. On June 12th, for example, the cruiser Molotov and a destroyer managed to sneak in. They brought over 2,300 soldiers, ammo, even some artillery pieces.
A vital lifeline.
But temporary. Because the Luftwaffe was watching, always watching. Within days, they sank the destroyer Savrasheny, the transport Abkhazia, the supply ship Gruzia.
Picked them off.
The attrition rate for resupply ships was just unsustainable. By late June, the defenders were facing critical shortages of absolutely everything. They couldn't effectively man the defenses anymore.
Ironically, the Germans started facing supply issues too, even the Luftwaffe.
Yeah, that's a fascinating detail. Richthofen's 8th Air Corps was flying incredible numbers of sorties averaging 780 a day, but they started running low.
Low on what? Fuel? Bombs?
Both. Especially aviation fuel and the heavy bombs needed for bunker busting. The sheer volume was just unsustainable, even for the Germans.
So Richthofen had to change tactics.
He did. He switched from wide-area carpet bombing to this technique of long, narrow-line bombing runs along specific targets, trying to conserve ordnance while still hitting key points.
Interesting. So even the attackers were feeling the strain of the siege's intensity.
Absolutely. It shows the immense resources being poured into this single point on the map.
Well, which brings us to the collapse. The northern sector defenses start to crumble.
Right. The real turning point was the fall of Fort Stalin on June 13th.
A major strongpoint. How did they take it?
It was actually defended by relatively few men, only about 200 from the 345th Rifle Division. The Germans hit it with a night attack, supported by Stug assault guns. Those low-profile tracked guns were perfect for bunker busting and heavy 420mm mortars.
Close quarters fighting inside the fort.
Brutal fighting. The defenders held out for a long time, but were eventually overrun.
What were the German casualties like for taking just that one fort?
Significant. 32 dead, 126 wounded, just Fort Stalin. But taking it was key. It compromised the entire northern defensive line, opened up huge gaps.
And the Germans were using new tech too, those tracked mines.
The Goliaths, yeah. Remote-controlled tracked mines, basically little explosive carts they could drive into enemy positions. They were quite effective against timber bunkers and clearing obstacles, shows the kind of specialized gear they needed.
So after Fort Stalin, the rest of the northern line went quickly.
Relatively quickly, yes.
Yeah.
By June 21st, Fort Lenin fell. Then the North Fort, which was incredibly heavily defended anti-tank ditch, 1,000 mines, dozens of bunkers, that fell too.
And the Soviet divisions holding that line.
Essentially wiped out. The 95th and 172nd Rifle Divisions just disintegrated. Mass surrenders started happening, although pockets fought on desperately, but the northern defense was broken.
So the North is gone. All Axis attention turns south to the last line.
The Sapun Ridge. Sapun Gora. That was the final organized Soviet defensive position. And on June 26th, the Luftwaffe gave it the full treatment. One last, absolutely devastating bombing run.
But it wasn't just a frontal assault that broke it, was it?
No, the decisive move was actually a flanking attack. Very clever. On June 29th, German assault boats crossed Severnaya Bay under cover of darkness and secured the southern shore.
Getting behind the main defenses on the ridge.
Exactly. It bypassed the strongest parts of the Sapun line and opened up a completely new attack axis. That really sealed the fate of the remaining defenders.
And the Soviet commanders, Oktyabrski and Petrov.
They recognized it was hopeless. They were evacuated, at the very last minute, by submarine. Left Major General Pyotr Novikov in command of the remnants.
An impossible position.
Completely. The final line was breached on July 3rd. Organized resistance just collapsed after that. By July 4th, 1942, it was effectively over.
though some fighting continued.
Scattered pockets held out until about July 9th, just desperate, isolated resistance. But the 8-month siege was finished.
And the Germans proclaimed a massive victory.
Oh, huge propaganda value. They lauded Manstein, called Sevastopol, the most powerful land and sea fortress of all that have ever existed in the world. Manstein himself got promoted to field marshal right afterwards.
But the cost, let's talk about the human cost. For the Soviets first.
Just catastrophic. The Soviet separate coastal army ceased to exist. Annihilated. Total Soviet casualties for the whole siege, killed, wounded, captured, are estimated around 200,481.
200,000 men.
And just in that final assault phase, Störfang, from June to July, 118,000 Soviet personnel lost. That includes 95,000 captured, many of them wounded, and at least 18,000 confirmed killed. It's the destruction of an entire army.
And Axis losses. They must have been heavy, too, despite the firepower advantage.
They were significant. For Störfang alone, total Axis losses were around 35,866 men, about 27,400 German and 8,500 Romanian.
Still very high for the attacker in a siege, right?
Now, it is. It underlines just how incredibly difficult and costly urban and fortress combat is, even when you have air supremacy and massive artillery. The defenders made them pay dearly.
Okay, so Manstein gets his victory, gets his field marshal's baton. But strategically, what did it mean?
This is where the story gets really interesting, moving from the tactical to the grand strategic level.
Yeah.
The key factor is time.
The siege took much longer than planned.
Much, much longer, months longer. And all that time, it tied down Manstein's entire 11th Army. Bled resources, chewed up ammunition, aircraft.
And crucially, delayed the 11th Army's next assignment.
Exactly. The plan, the original plan for summer 1942, was for Manstein's victorious army to immediately move north after taking Sevastopol.
To support the main German summer offensive.
Yes, Operation Blau, or Case Blue, the big push towards Stalingrad and the Caucasus oil fields. Army Group South needed the 11th Army. Badly.
For what role?
To secure the flank. The advance towards Stalingrad was incredibly long and exposed. Paulus's 6th Army was driving deep into Soviet territory. They desperately needed Manstein's experienced divisions and heavy artillery to cover their northern flank as they pushed towards the Volga.
But the 11th Army wasn't available in time.
No. It was stuck dealing with the aftermath in Sevastopol, the logistics of the cleanup, prisoner handling, and then the slow process of redeployment. By the time elements were ready, the crisis for the 6th Army was already developing.
So the absence of the 11th Army left a strategic hole.
A gaping hole. Paulus's northern flank was dangerously weak. This delay, caused directly by the 8 months Sevastopol held out. It's seen by many historians as a major contributing factor to the problems of Case Blue.
Problems that ultimately led to
the disaster at Stalingrad. The 6th Army, overstretched, flank exposed, eventually encircled and destroyed. That crucial, combat-hardened support from the 11th Army just wasn't there when it was needed most.
So Sevastopol's defense, even though it ended in defeat, it had huge ripple effects.
Massive ripple effects. It shows how a successful defense, even one that ultimately fails tactically, can fundamentally alter the course of a much larger campaign, even an entire theater of war.
Okay, let's wrap this up. We've covered the brutal fighting, the incredible firepower, the strategic context. What are the main takeaways for you?
For me, it's the sheer concentration of resources. That figure of nearly 68,000 tons of munitions spent by the Axis in just the final month. 23,000 plus air sorties. It just highlights the unbelievable effort needed to crack a well-defended fortress position.
And the time. The defenders didn't win, obviously. They were destroyed. But the time they bought.
That time penalty was ultimately far more valuable to the overall Soviet war effort than holding the port itself would have been, arguably.
Yeah, the historical significance isn't just that Sevastopol fell, it's what the Axis had to expend to make it fall.
Exactly. It acted like a magnet, drawing in vital resources, those super heavy guns that were basically useless anywhere else. Richthofen's entire Specialist Air Corps. And critically, Manstein's 11th Army kept out of the main offensive just long enough.
Just long enough for it to matter hundreds of miles away on the Volga.
Precisely. It drew resources and, crucially, time away from other fronts at the most critical moment of the 1942 summer campaign.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe a provocative one for you listening. Consider the irony here. Manstein achieves this stunning, hard-won victory at Sevastopol, gets promoted. It's supposed to be his stepping stone to greater things, freeing up his army.
But that very victory, because it took so long and cost so much to achieve, inadvertently ties him down. It delays his army just enough.
That its absence is felt catastrophically by the Sixth Army heading towards Stalingrad.
contributing directly to the strategic situation that led to the encirclement and the Reich's greatest single defeat of the war. A victory that, in a way, helped sow the seeds of disaster just a few months later.
A powerful fortress, a brutal siege, and consequences that echoed across the entire Eastern Front. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.